We can only add or subtract fractions when they have the same denominators. If they don't have the same denominators, we have to find a common denominator. In general, we find the least common denominator so that we don't have to simplify at the end of the equation. Let's start with a simple example. 5 over 8 plus 3 over 8. We add the numerators 5 and 3, which equals 8, and keep the denominator 8. Hence, we have 8 over 8, in other words, 8 divided by 8, which equals 1. 3 over 5 plus 4 over 5. So let's add the numerators 3 and 4, which equals 7, and keep the denominator from the original fractions. What about this one? 7 over 11 minus 3 over 11. 7 minus 3 is 4, and keep the denominator. So we have 4 over 11. Let's take another example. X plus 3 over 7 minus 2 over 7. X plus 3 minus 2 over 7 . Three minus 2 is 1. Let's solve the last example where the denominators are already the same. 3 over 5 plus 2 over 5 plus 11 over 5. Three plus 2 is 5, plus 11 is 16. So we get 16 over 5. We see that adding and subtracting fractions is fairly simple when the fractions have the same denominator. Just add or subtract the numerators and keep the denominator the same. That's it. Let's move on to fractions with different denominators and focus on these two fractions, 1 over 4 and 5 over 6. The goal is to find the least common denominator to add or subtract these two fractions. We have a few ways to find the least common denominator. Let's dive into it. The least common denominator is simply the least common multiple, which is the smallest number that is exactly divisible by each denominator. Let's find the least common denominator of 1 over 4 and 5 over 6. In other words, which is the smallest number that is exactly divisible by 4 and 6 without a remainder. Here we see that the smallest number is 12. But if we don't see that the smallest number is 12, which is divisible by 4 and 6, we can write a list of the multiples of 4 and 6. The multiples of 4 are 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, 36, and so on. The multiples of 6 are 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, 42, 48, 54, and so on. Some common multiples of 4 and 6 are 12, 24, and 36. The least common multiple of 4 and 6 is 12. Listing the multiples of each number is one way of finding the least common denominator. Another way is using the prime factorization of each number. The prime factorization of 4 is 2 times 2. And the prime factorization of 6 is 2 times 3. By the way, factoring a number means to break that number down into numbers that go into it. So we have 4, which is 2 times 2. And we have 6, which is 2 times 3. We don't need to repeat the factors that 4 and 6 have in common. So we have 2 times 2 times 3, which is equal to 12. Let's use the least common denominator 12 to add the fractions 1 over 4 and 5 over 6. 1 over 12 is equivalent to 1 over 4. To find that, we can divide 12 by 4, which is 3. So 4 times 3 is 12. Now 1 times 3 is 3. What over 12 is equivalent to 5 over 6. Again, to find the new numerator, we can divide 12 by 6. Or we can ask the question, 6 times what is 12? 6 times 2 is 12. Hence, 5 times 2 is 10. These fractions may look different. Also this. But they have the same value. We now have the same denominators. You can also write these two fractions as 3 plus 10 over 12. Adding shouldn't be a problem. Let's solve another example. What is the least common denominator of 5 over 36 and 7 over 40? Let's make a list again to find the least common denominator of 36 and 40. "36, 72, 108, 144, 180, 216, 252, 288, 324, 360, and so on. 40, 80, 120, 160, 200, 240, 280, 320, 360, and so on. So we see 360 is the smallest number, which is divisible by both 36 and 40. In other words, 360 is the least common denominator. Let's find the least common denominator using the prime factorization. When the numbers are bigger, as we see here, you can arrange your factors in a tree. 36 is 2 times 18. 18 is 2 times 9. 9 is 3 times 3. 40 is 4 times 10. 4 is 2 times 2. And 10 is 2 times 5. It doesn't matter which factors you start with. The numbers at the end of each branch will always be the same. Each branch ends with a prime number, which can't be broken down any further. So the prime factorization of 36 is 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. And the prime factorization of 40 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 5. Just ensure that you don't repeat the factors that 36 and 40 have in common. Hence we have 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 3 times 5, which is 360. Again, as in the previous example, the two fractions with the 360 in the denominator have to be equivalent to the fractions with the 36 and 40 in the denominator. Feel free to pause the video and try it on your own. (360) divided by 36 is 10. 5 times 10 is 50. 360 divided by 40 is 9. So 40 times 9 is 360. 7 times 9 is 63. We now have the same denominators again. Adding or subtracting these fractions shouldn't be a problem now. Let's do a quick recap. Adding and subtracting fractions works only when we have common denominators. It's best to use the least common denominator, so you don't need to simplify the fractions at the end. If you don't have the same denominator, you can find it easily when the denominators are small. In any other cases, you can make a list or use the prime factorization method. Another way to any common denominator, but not the least common, is simply to multiply the denominators. But in that case, you have to simplify the fractions at the end. Once you find the least common denominator, just add the denominators and keep the denominator as it is. Simplify it if required. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments. Thanks for watching. This video is what I did for you. If you want to do something for me, hit the bell button, share and subscribe. Happy learning, everyone.